want to start with just a shout out to the sound team back there, because they are the important aspect of the church that almost the only time they get recognized is when something goes wrong. And I don't know, I think watching my brother back home for years run the sound, sometimes I just hear his frustration. It's like everything is good all the way up, and all of a sudden in the middle of the service something goes wrong, and everyone's looking like, come on, like, what? Get your act together. And so I want to bless them for their faithfulness in doing what they do. Hope you've had a good week. Hope you've all been walking with Jesus this week. It's a kind of a small group. There's a lot of the youth that are gone, VSers gone, camping, and as well as other families. So welcome to each one, especially for you visitors. There was a message that God has been putting on my heart recently that I wasn't sure when he wanted me to share it. But as I prayed, I felt like he was directing me to preach that this morning. And so I want to just be faithful in doing this. This morning, I guess if you could give the message a title, it would just simply be rewards. And I want, so that is a title, but as we go through the message, I guess my prayer is this, that you would be strengthened, that you'd be encouraged, but along with that, I also hope and pray that it'll stir up, the Holy Spirit will convict us as well in some things, because I'm going to start off with blessing, but then there's also there's also some things we want to just challenge each other with. So even though the majority of the message may come across as a blessing, especially in the start, I also let's not just, this sounds good, I'm just here to just get blessed for what I do, but that our heart posture is, but Lord, show me something in here that I'm needing to see as well. So I'm going to start with just simply naming a lot of different things in this community. I believe sometimes we can have blessings. Sometimes God gives us things, and they're right in front of us. And they're such a part of our life, and they get to be such a part of our life for long enough that we actually fail to see the value in it. Or maybe it's something we just take for granted. And I would say probably, especially for those of you that have lived here for a long time, and your role here, whatever that looks like, whether it's in the church or with New Horizons or whatever it is, you've just known what it's like. And our natural tendencies are to look at the negative things that are here, the things that challenge us, or maybe it's the things that are done differently than I would if I was doing that. And then we find ourselves not being grateful for all the things that God has given us, and also being critical of others. That's the human tendency. And so we just want to look at that. And so I want to just start off with doing just the opposite. And there's a part of me that hesitated, because I was like, man, I don't want to miss anyone. And so if you are faithfully serving in something that is not going to be mentioned here in a bit, it's definitely not because I thought of you and thought, well, they're not doing a good job, or I would do it different. So I just want to be So forgive me if I missed, but just as I thought, I'm going to start with Skyline. To the leadership team, Nelson, Nate, Ricky, Asher, I just bless you for your faithfulness, for your heart for the church, for the times that we've sat together and we've discussed things, and we know there's differences of opinions. And there's decisions that have to be made, and we take that to God and say, but God, what are you saying? And sometimes the tears actually come because we know that when decisions have to be made, sometimes it's not going to be the decision that every single person wants. But yet in that, your faithfulness in preaching, studying all the hours you spend, having the hard conversations that need to be had at times, desiring unity for the church, all of that. I bless you for that. The food committee, faithfully serving, and all the things. Some of these, as we go through there, you're going to feel like I never get recognized, or this position never gets recognized. And that's right. And it's unfortunate. But this morning, I just want to bless you as a food committee. Think of the ones that, and I don't even know who all they are, that a lot of the year has coffee out here when we come in, and just there serving coffee, not because you have to, but because it's your heart. I bless you for that. The greeters, the ushers, worship leaders. It's more than just getting up and picking out a few songs. I know I led worship for years, and it's throughout the week saying, God, I don't know what he's going to be preaching, but somehow will the worship line up? Will you just give me the songs that line up with what you're wanting to do? Sunday school teachers, all the time you invest in studying. The mission board. And as we keep going, I hope you, if you've found yourself at a place of whatever, we need a grip here, we need to get on fire for God, all of that, there may be some truth to that. But I hope there's a renewed appreciation for the things that God has given you and ways that people are serving. The mission board, the sound team, I talked about that a little bit already. Small group leaders, the Sunday host groups, the youth leaders. They have families to raise too. And yet they're giving of their time to invest into the youth. The trustees, another place that probably the only time they get recognized that much is when there's a problem on the church property or something needs attention or whatever. Foster families. Those of you that have adopted children, choosing to love someone that's not even your biological child. Social committee, those of you serving in VBS, whether you're on the planning committee or helping with it. You fathers that are out day after day providing for your family, and sometimes the money is just tight and you're really not sure how you're going to make ends meet, but yet day after day you're going out and you're making it happen. You mothers that are at home, some of you may have jobs, but some of you are at home and you're busy with your children, and it just seems like this thankless job because it's not very often your little children are running up and saying, thank you, Mom, for being such a good mom. Thank you for all. It's just more or less, Mom, I want this, and settling disputes and stuff. Children doing chores. Some of you young children, you have chores that you do that you probably don't want to do, but yet Mom and Dad ask you to faithfully do them. Hopefully this will cover anything that I missed. There's some of you that have gifts and step into roles that there's not even a title or a position for, but you're faithful in seeing a need and you step into that. Bless you for that. Some of you have businesses and you should be You're affecting the community through business, through occupation. We have school teachers, school board. We have youth that are on fire for God. Maybe some of you are not as on fire for God as you know you should be. But yet making a difference. People looking in, wow. Most youth at that age are out doing, they're out living, they're just living it up, and yet here's young people that are serving the Lord. Bless you for that. Those of you that are with New Horizons, bless you as a leadership team for leaning in year after year, just wanting to know the heart of God. Like, God, what are you saying? Where are you wanting to take us? Where are you wanting to take the ministry? Those of you chaplains that are going in day after day and pouring into what some people would possibly even look at as the outcast. They're not outcasts. These are people that Jesus died for. And you're going in and you're pouring into them. Bless you for that. Those of you that are doulas. The VSers, giving of your time, giving a year of your time. And there's a lot of you sitting back there that may not currently be a VSer, but you've come through the program. Bless all of you for serving in that way. The reentry team, those of you that are involved in administration with NHM. Joel sitting over there trying to keep up with vehicles that need work, and as a mechanic, and again, a job that he's mainly needed when something is wrong. Cooks, Naaman and Marion, just cooking and cooking and cooking and cooking for the Ascend program. We try to do a good job at thanking them, but I'm sure we don't thank them near enough. There's some of you that serve with New Horizons at doing maintenance, running around, fixing things, repairing things at the store, repairing things at the office, in the dorms, whatever it is. Those of you that are involved in the retail, more the store part of it, you're interacting with customers and you're spreading the love of Jesus through that. Those of you that are at the barn day after day, you're in production day after day, day after day, touching dirty things. You're making a difference. Those of you that are on pickup and delivery, Austin, getting in the semi day after day, driving and picking up goods and bringing them back. Those of you that are in child care, making a difference in these young children's life. Those that are involved in the child placement agency and stepping into hard, broken situations. And God, you have to provide here. And I'm sure I've missed some, both with Skyline and New Horizons. So if I miss something that you're doing, this is a place for you to insert that. But how often do people have the opportunity to sit in a place like this where we have a church and we have a ministry that we can be involved in, and we're surrounded by people that are doing all these different things? And when was the last time that we really had a conversation with God about this and said, God, we are so blessed. Yes, there's things that I wish could be different. Yes, there's things that maybe someone is doing something different than I would. But they're stepping into it and they're doing the best they know how to do, or maybe they're stepping into something to fill a role maybe that is not even really their gifting, but they're wanting to be faithful. And then like speaking that blessing over each other. So to all of you, in all of your various roles, thank you, but much more important, I pray God blesses you for it. And I say that personally and for my family. Our lives have been much richer. Our lives are much richer because of you and the way you all invest in the kingdom in your various roles. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's a few of you youth that would have heard this. You would have heard this story that I'm about to read if you were at the conference in Georgia. 17-year-old Brian Moore only had a short time to write something for a class. The subject was what heaven was like. It's the best thing I ever wrote, he said, but it was also his last. Brian Moore died May 27, 1997, the day after Memorial Day. He was driving home from a friend's house when his car went off the road and he struck a utility pole. He emerged from the wreck unharmed, but he stepped on a downed power line and was electrocuted. The Moores framed a copy of Brian's essay and hung it among the family portraits in the living room. I think God used him to make a point. I think we were meant to find it and make something out of it, Mrs. Moore said of the essay. She and her husband want to share their son's vision of life after death. I'm happy for Brian. I know he's in heaven. I know I'll see him. The essay was titled The Room. In that place between wakefulness and dreams, I found myself in the room. There were no distinguishing features except for the one wall covered with small index card files. They were like the ones in libraries that list titles by author or subject in alphabetical order. But these files, which stretch from floor to ceiling and seemingly endless in either direction, had very different headings. As I drew near the wall of files, the first to catch my attention was the one that read, Girls I Have Liked. I opened it and began flipping through the cards. I quickly shut it, shocked to realize that I recognized the names written on each one. And then without being told, I knew exactly where I was. This lifeless room with its small files was a crude catalog system for my life. Here were written the actions of my every moment, big and small, in a detail my memory couldn't match. A sense of wonder and curiosity, coupled with horror, stirred within me as I began randomly opening files and exploring their content. Some brought joy and sweet memories. Others a sense of shame and regret, so intense that I would look over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching. A file named Friends was next to the one marked Friends I Have Betrayed. The titles range from the mundane to the outright weird. Books I have read, lies I have told, comfort I have given, jokes I have laughed at. Some were almost hilarious in their exactness. Things I've yelled at my brothers. Others I couldn't laugh at. Things I've done in my anger. Things I've muttered under my breath at my parents. I never ceased to be surprised by the content. Often there were many more cards than I expected. Sometimes fewer than I hoped. I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the life I had lived. Could it be possible that I had the time in my years, 17 years, to fill each of these thousands or even millions of cards? But each card confirmed this truth. Each was written in my own handwriting, each signed with my signature. When I pulled out the file marked TV shows I have watched, I realized the files grew to contain their content. The cards were packed tightly, and yet after 2 or 3 yards, I hadn't found the end of the file. I shut it, shamed, not so much by the quality of shows, but more by the vast time I knew that file represented. When it came to a file marked Lustful Thoughts, I felt a chill run through my body. I pulled the file out only an inch, not willing to test its size, and drew out a card. I shuddered at its detailed content. I felt sick to think that such a moment had been recorded. An almost animal rage broke on me. One thought dominated my mind. No one must ever see these cards. No one must ever see this room. I have to destroy them. In insane frenzy, I yanked the file out. Its size didn't matter now. I had to empty it and burn the cards. But as I took it at one end and began pounding it on the floor, I could not dislodge a single card. I became desperate and pulled out a card only to find it as strong as steel when I tried to tear it. Defeated and utterly helpless, I returned the file to its slot. Leaning my forehead against the wall, I let out a long, self-pitying sigh. And then I saw it. The title bore People I Have Shared the Gospel With. The handle was brighter than those around it, newer, almost unused. I pulled on its handle and a small box, not more than 3 inches, fell into my hands. I could count the cards it contained in one hand. And then the tears came. I began to weep, sobs so deep that they hurt. They started in my stomach and shook through me. I fell on my knees and cried. I cried out of shame from the overwhelming shame of it all. The rows of file shelves swirled in my tear-filled eyes. No one must ever know of this room. I must lock it up and hide the key. But then, as I pushed away the tears, I saw him. No, please not him. Not here. Oh, anyone but Jesus. I watched helplessly as he began to open the files and read the cards. I couldn't bear to watch his response. And in the moments I could bring myself to look at his face, I saw a sorrow deeper than my own. He seemed to intuitively go to the worst boxes. Why did he have to read every one? Finally, he turned and looked at me from across the room. He looked at me with pity in his eyes, but this was a pity that didn't anger me. I dropped my head, covered my face with my hands, and began to cry. He walked over and put his arm around me. He could have said so many things, but he didn't say a word. He just cried with me. Then he got up and walked back to the wall of files. Starting at one end of the room, he took out a file and one by one began to sign his name over mine on each card. No, I shouted, rushing to him. All I could find to say was, no, no, as I pulled the card from him. His name shouldn't be on these cards. But there it was, written in red, so rich, so dark, so alive. The name of Jesus covered mine. It was written with his blood. He gently took the card back. He smiled a sad smile and began to sign the cards. I don't think I'll ever understand how he did it so quickly, but the next instant, it seemed, I heard him close the last file and walk back to my side. He placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "It is finished." I stood up, and he led me out of the room. There was no lock on the door because there were still more cards to be written. Now, to some of us, man, that's encouraging, and that's challenging. And we're like, man, I just want to fill that file up so much more. I just want to do everything God has asked me to do so much more than what I have been doing. And then I think it would just be absurd to think that there's also this same story isn't also things that say, man, I got some cards in my file that I don't want Jesus to see. But he already does. He already does. I was, if y'all could pull up Psalm 37, I'm going to ask you all to stand again. And I know this psalm it's fairly long, probably take 3 minutes or so to read, but if you could all stand, and I want us to read this together, but here's what I want you to do. I don't want it to be just reading so we can hurry get through it and sit down. What I want you to see is the contrast. As we go through here, the word but will come up numerous times, and he's going to say, there is this for the righteous, there is this for those that follow the Lord, there is this for those who keep my commandments, but here's what it is for the sinner. Here's what it is for the unrighteous. I'm going to do this to the sinner, but this thing, the contrast that it brings. So let's all read this together. Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from evil and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while, the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace. The wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth at him. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend their bows to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose way is upright. Their swords shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. Better is the little that the righteous has than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their heritage will remain forever. They are not put to shame in evil times. In the days of famine they have abundance. But the wicked will perish. The enemies of the Lord are like the glory of the pastures. They vanish like smoke, they vanish away. The wicked borrows but does not pay back, but the righteous is generous and gives. For those blessed by the Lord shall inherit the land, but those cursed by him shall be cut off. The steps of a man are established by the Lord when he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand. I have been young and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread. He is ever lending generously, and his children become a blessing. Turn away from evil and do good, so shall you dwell forever. For the Lord loves justice, he will not forsake his saints. They are preserved forever, but the children of the wicked shall be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell upon it forever. The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The law of his God is in his heart, his steps do not slip. The wicked watches for the righteous and seeks to put him to death. The Lord will not abandon him to his power, or let him be condemned when he is brought to trial. Wait for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the land. You will look on when the wicked are cut off. I have seen a wicked, ruthless man spreading himself like a green laurel tree. But he passed away, and behold, he was no more. Though I sought him, he could not be found. Mark the blameless and behold the upright, for there is a future for the man of peace. But transgressors shall be altogether destroyed. The future of the wicked shall be cut off. The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in the time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him. Thank you for that, and you can be seated. Did you catch all of the contrast between the righteous and the unrighteous? Those who follow the way of the Lord, those who keep his commandments, and those who don't. As we look at the thing of just the topic of rewards, just a few more scriptures. Psalm 119, 9 through 11. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The rules of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned. In keeping them, there is great reward. Think of Luke 19. Just think of the master, and he gave 3 of his servants talents. To one he gave 1 talent, to another he gave 2 talents, another he gave 5 talents. And he told them to use these. And he leaves, and when he comes back, he comes to the one that he had given 5 talents to. And he says, Master, I've went and invested or whatever that looked like for them, but I've used the talents that you've given me. And the master is like, in my own words, paraphrasing, the master's like, good job, you're a faithful servant. Here, I'm going to give you 5 more talents. So now the one that had 5 had 10, and then he comes to the one that he had given 2 talents. And the master and the servant says, hey, you gave me 2 talents, and here I went with those and made 2 more. And he says, good job, you're good and faithful servant. I want you to have more. I'm going to double that. You see, he said the same thing to the servant with 2 talents that he did to the servant with 5. Because you see, it wasn't about how many different things he could do. It was how well he did what he was called to do. And so the same thing that was said to the servant with 5 talents was said to the servant with 2 talents. Well, then he comes to the one with 1 talent. And he has these excuses. Oh, you're such and such kind of master, and I know you're a hard master and all these things. And I went and I hid the talent that you gave me. Outcome of that was so different. It wasn't even that he lost the talent. The talent was still there. But the judgment that came on that was completely different. Jesus, he just wants nothing to do with that. So where I want to kind of go this morning as we look at this is what if instead of comparing ourselves among ourselves and saying, okay, well, Arlen, as he leads New Horizons, he's one that he's thinking 5 and 10 years down the road and trying to, all of these things. Well, I could never do that. Like, I have a hard time planning tomorrow. Like, I would never want that job. Okay, well, maybe God didn't call me to that job. Maybe that's not the talent God gave me. But what did he give me? What did he give me? Maybe my job, maybe the talent that he gave me or the things that he gave me, the gifts he gave me to steward and to do well, doesn't usually take 5 and 10 year planning because we don't really know what tomorrow's going to look like. But are we faithful? Or are we in our false humility going to go say, well, I know God has given me this gift, but I don't want to look arrogant, so I'm just not really going to let anyone know that I have this gift. Because I want to be humble and all, And I don't want anyone to think that I'm arrogant. Okay, that sounds good. But what if we change the way we think of it and we say, but it's not my gift. It's not my talent, it's his. He gave it to me. And so by me hiding this thing, I'm actually hiding what he has given me to invest with and to use to the community around and to affect our realm of influence. I just believe that sometimes the enemy he can make us buy into things, I'm just going to call them lies, to keep things hidden that God wants to use. And he'll allow us, the lie there is that, oh, well, this is humility to do this. I'm gonna say something in the recruiting or in the interview process with VSers, and nothing against any of the VSers that I've ever interviewed, because if I would have been the one on the other end, it'd be the exact same way. One of the hardest questions for them to usually answer as a whole is, what are your strengths? When I ask them, what are your strengths and weaknesses? I hear it over and over. Well, it feels arrogant to say, here's a strength. And I get it, but I'm just saying, like, what if we, for me to come into a place and they say, hey, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And I say, well, I think I do pretty good with relationships. That feels arrogant. Well, maybe and the devil's like, no, you remember that person from 10 years ago that hated you, or, he wants us to believe this stuff. But yet maybe God has just given you the gift and said, I want you to do relationships well. I'm not asking you to stand up here and preach. I just want you to do relationships well and to build that bond and to help people walk through hard things. And so, I do. God has given me the gift of relationship, or maybe the gift of faith, or we could just go on and on. And yet we take that talent and we hide it. And I just wonder what Jesus says about that. If it was our talent, if it was mine, then it would be arrogant. But you see, if it's his, and it's going to bring glory to him, it changes the whole picture. 1 Corinthians 3:10-15, according to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, and someone else is building on it. Let each one take care how he builds on it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's works will become manifest. Think of the room. For the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire. And the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. I think it's pretty clear here that God is looking at the motives. He's not just looking at what I do. I can spend my whole day doing the right thing, but doing it with the wrong motive. And it says he's going to try it. And everything that was not done with pure motives is going to be burned up. And so if this is what I'm bringing, this is my gift, it's going to be burned up. But if we say, God has given me this gift and I want to steward it well, how can I use it? There's reward in that. So not only what we do, but our motive as well matters, and we will be judged accordingly. We could look at Matthew 6, where it talks about not laying up treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal, but lay up treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Here's the thing. The majority of the time, if it's something that I'm bringing, and it's with selfish motive, and there's some, and I'm viewing it as my gift, my talent, a lot of the time, it is to, in some way, whether that's financially, your reputation, whatever, a lot of time the idea is to actually raise yourself. And if we're doing it from that standpoint, on a human level, in order for me to raise myself simply, I think it would be safe to say 100% of the time means that I'm going to have to step on someone else. So in order for my business to go boom, 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 really be growing, probably means that someone else's business has declined some. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. What's our motive? What are we doing with it? In order for just whatever way, whatever your hobby is, whatever the thing is that you like to do, just like when it's coming from selfish motives, often someone else has to suffer. However, in the kingdom, when it's his gifts, when it's his talents, it almost always takes sacrifice. It takes me dying to myself and saying, I am going to have to be poured out for someone else. It doesn't mean we don't enjoy doing it, but it does mean that it's going to take a lot of sacrifice. Why? It's a kingdom principle. The more we can decrease faithfully, and we're decreasing ourselves, Christ increases. So how are we doing with that? I know last year in one of my messages right at the end, I just mentioned, I just want to briefly touch on it again, Revelation 20. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. From his presence, earth and sky fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books. And again, for those of you that weren't here, just think of this, books, it's plural. Books were open. Then another book, singular, was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books, plural, according to what they had done. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it, death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one of them, according to what they had done. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death. This is the second death, the lake of fire. And if anyone's name was not written in the book, singular, of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. And somehow, for most of my life, I just thought there's this judgment day, and I'm going to come there, and I know my works won't save me, but somehow I'm just going to be judged out of this book of life. It's just kind of the end of it. I'm either, I don't know how it works. I don't really, as long as I get in. And I don't know, a couple of years ago when I come across, it's like, no, that is the most important, is our name written in the book of life. But it also says we're going to be judged out of other books, plural, according to the things we've done. And it says there, we just read in 1 Corinthians, that the things we have done, the motives of those things are going to be tried. And so how are we doing with that? What is our attitude and the driving principle behind our actions? Let's think just a little bit of in the account of the prodigal son. We actually, right now, aren't necessarily, there's so many different things you can get out of this story, but we're not necessarily going to look at right now as much at the effects of sin necessarily, or what happened there, or really even the love of the Father. What I want to look at just a little bit is when I was reading through that again this week, it just stood out to me how both of these sons wanted the same thing. both of these sons simply wanted daddy's stuff. There was selfish motive. The one did it one way, the other did it another way. The first one, he did it through rebellion and sin, and he wasn't supposed to get it until Dad passed away. But he said, Dad, I want it now. Give me my part of it now. So he did it through rebellion. He was willing to break a relationship from Dad so that I can have what I want it now. And he leaves. And even think about when he came back. He didn't come back with the mindset, I'm going to go be a son. He didn't even come back with the mindset of, I will be a slave. You know, slaves actually lived there. They would live there on the plantation or farm or whatever you want to call it, with the family, everything. Like they were slaves. They had their things they had to do, but at the same time, everything was provided for them. He said, I want to go as a servant, someone that would come in for hire, for wages. And he said, I will come back, be a servant, and I will repay. Again, had his mind on things. So now, Dad accepts him, and he says, no, bring him in, put a ring on his finger, put a robe on him, give him sandals. He does this. And then, kill the fatted calf, and let's have this big celebration. And then the older son comes in. The older son comes in, he says, what in the world is this party about? Oh, your brother has come home. Think of the response of him. He didn't even say, Dad, could we talk about this a bit? There was not even, in his response, there was not even an acknowledgement really of, you're my father, everything I'm going to get comes from you. And there wasn't even like, this is my brother, like what's going on? Can we talk about this a bit? It was, this thy son. It was almost like he was wanting to separate himself from both father and brother just out of resentment. Why? Because he knew that this fatted calf in this celebration that was happening, all that the father had at that point was supposed to eventually go to him. And so now, you throwing a party for the younger son is going to cost me. Resentment. You see, both of them wanted daddy's things. One did it through this self-righteousness. All these years I've been with you. I've served you faithfully. I've done this, but your brother did this. So one did it through this self-righteousness. One did it through rebellion. But at the end of the day, they were both after daddy's things. They weren't interested necessarily in relationship with dad. So what is the why behind the things we do? What is our relationship to Father God? How do I view the talents that God has given to us? What are we trying to gain by using the talents God has given us? Is it for selfish gain or to increase the kingdom? Do we have the kind of relationship with God that all we want is for Jesus to be glorified and to show others the way to the Father, regardless of who gets the recognition? And there's some of you that do that very well, and I bless you for that. Is our main focus that people would come into relationship with Father God? Is our driving force to serve and wash the feet of those in our realm of influence, or to make sure we have a good reputation, even if this means stepping on others to lift ourselves up? What if we changed our perspective on gifts, talents, and instead of viewing them as our gifts, we viewed them as God's gifts that he has given to us to steward, and that our reward will be based on how faithful we have been with them and who we have given the glory to? What if we changed our perspective when we are not as talented as others And instead of hiding the one talent I do have out of pity, embarrassment, low self-esteem, or whatever, we are faithful with that talent. And through this faithfulness, God says, I want to give you another one, and I want to give you more. What would it look like if we never had to vote anyone in here at church to fill offices? What if there would simply be a time, and I know we're all busy right away, but we're busy. I know, I get it. But I'm just saying, what if we could simply take all the needs at the end of the year, whenever that's done, we have all the needs that are here to be filled, and we just give them out, or whatever that would look like. And yes, God's given me this gift. I'd love to wash people's feet in this way. I'd love to serve in this way. We don't even have to vote. You know, some years ago, we had took that approach more at our church back in Georgia. And the blessing that has come from that anymore, that very little voting has to happen, because people just say, I may not even want to. I may feel too busy, but I do know this is a gift God has given me. I'll serve. And that has been a huge blessing. So, as I look out over the crowd, there's so many gifts and talents here. Some of the things you're already walking in. Some of the things that you may have that talent that you're just like, man, I just don't want to look arrogant. And we don't. But if God gave it, we need to use it. There's some of you that God has really blessed financially. And for you to be able to give unselfishly, bless you for that. Your reward in heaven will be great for giving. Some of you, God has given the gift of public speaking, organizational skills, some just wise counsel. Some of you just listen well. Some of you could be like Job's friends that stay there for 7 days, just caring and listening. Some of you, God has given a gift of discernment, or administration, or teaching, prophetic gift. Scott, I know God has given you a prophetic gift. And your motive in that means everything. Is it to bring healing? Is it to bring the Word of God into a situation, or is it to lift Scott up? I know your heart, and I bless you in that. Some of you just serve well and don't even want to be recognized. Some of you have a very likable personality. Everyone just likes you. Some of you are very inspirational, and the list could go on. But what I want to just close with here, God knows the talent that he gave you. God knows talent or talents. Again, let's not get caught up in whether we have the 1, 2, or 5 talents. Let's not get caught up in which talent God gave me, but rather in the faithfulness of it. How are we using that? But here's the thing we also have to recognize. The devil, the enemy, also knows. The enemy also sees when you do something well. He also recognizes when you have a gift for something. And he's determined to hijack that. He's determined to take advantage of that to bring division. He's determined to try to manipulate. This is where some of these things, even even these things of maybe spiritual abuse. Maybe God has called someone into church leadership and to preach the word, and he's given them the gift. He's called them to this. But all of a sudden, maybe they start getting a little fame or something and start kind of, oh, look, and they start, the motives become wrong, and the devil is able to come in there, and it starts being this power grab or something, and people become wounded, and they leave a trail of wounded people behind them. You see, the devil recognizes those gifts. Or maybe you have the gift of just being so caring and listening, and you're just willing to give anyone that's in a bad situation a listening ear. And that becomes so much your identity that maybe you don't even see. But the reason God gave me that is so that I can, just in a gentle way, speak hard truth into a situation where truth hasn't been seen for a long time. But I just want to keep being light. I just want to be this friend, just this good friend to everyone. And so we're not even willing to, we're not willing to be obedient to the things God is putting on our hearts just because I'm viewing it as my gift. And I want to hold on to it. And I just don't want anyone to not like me. The devil probably cares a lot more about what gifts you have, what talents you have, than what we even do. Because he wants to try to use what God has given and manipulate it and to make and to bring destruction. I would just like if we could just, as Nate comes up, if we could just close our eyes and sing the chorus, the prayer, would you be poured out like wine? And I just want you to think about what you're singing. The first verse, would you be poured out like wine upon the altar for me? Would you be broken like bread to feed the hungry? Would you be so one with me that you would do just as I will? Would you be life in light, in love, my word fulfilled? And then if that's your heart this morning, then we respond in the second verse with, yes, I'll be poured out like wine upon the altar for you. Yes, I'll be broken like bread to feed the hungry. Yes, I'll be so one with you. I will do just what you will. I will be light in life, your word fulfilled through me. So Nate, as you come, let's just close our eyes and sing that prayer. Would you be poured out